Good morning, boys and girls. This is your math e-learning lesson for Friday, April 17th. Today we're going to be looking at dividing by multiples of 10. This is lesson 120, dividing by multiples of 10. So the first thing that they show us is 72 divided by 20. Okay, now for some of you this is really a review. We have done long division before, but again they're showing you how you divided by 10, now dividing by multiples of 10. And as always, the most important thing is to remember placement of your quotient. So again, when you start your dividing, you know that when we divide, our steps in dividing: divide, multiply, subtract, bring down, or bring up if you have a remainder. So here we have 72 divided by 20. And so what you need to do is you would take a look and you would say, okay, well, 7, can I do 7 divided by 20? No, but because it is a multiple of 10, you want to think 7 divided by 2. 7 divided by 2 would be 3 because 3 times 2 is 6. However, if you wrote the 3 up here, what are you saying? 3 times 2 equals 6, but then what are you going to do over here? Okay, so you do not write the 3 above the 7. The reason that you don't do that is because we're really not saying 7 divided by 2. We're using that 7 divided by 2 to help us figure out 72 divided by 20, because that's really what we need to do, because we can't say 7 divided by 20. That can't be done. So we do need to say 72 divided by 20. But to make it a little bit easier to figure out what that quotient would be, we use this as our guide. And we know that 7 divided by 2 is 3. So we're going to say 72 divided by 20 is 3. And again, because we're saying 72, the 3 gets written above the ones place here. And then we know that 3 times 0 is 0, and 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 20 is 60. So now we can subtract 72 minus 60, and we get an answer of 12. Well, we can't say 12 divided by 20, so we know that 12 is going to be our remainder. And up to now, most times you saw that your remainder was only a single digit number, but a remainder can have more than one digit. You can have a 2-digit number. Remember, the rule is just that your remainder must be less than your divisor, must be less than what you are dividing by. If it's the same as what you're dividing by or greater than what you're dividing by, then that tells you your quotient is not large enough. Okay, but 12 is less than 20, so that's fine. That becomes our remainder. So 72 divided by 20 equals 3 with a remainder of 12. Again, if you were going to do a multiplication checking problem, you would say 20 times 3, and that equals 60. And then you have to add on your remainder, 72, and that's what you started with. So when necessary, you can do the multiplication checking to make sure that you've worked out the division correctly. So now let's move to this. The next example they give us is 127 divided by 30. Well, same idea. We look, are we going to say 1 divided by 30? No. Can we say 12 divided by 30? No. So we have to say 127 divided by 30. Well, we haven't memorized facts for 30, so what do? You break it down and look for those basic facts to help you with the larger problem. So in this case, if we broke it down, we're not going to say 1 divided by 3, but we could say 12 divided by 3. You know that 12 divided by 3 is 4, so then there is a good possibility that 4 is what we need to use here. Okay, so if we were going to use 4, we would put the 4 over the ones place because we're actually saying 127 divided by 30. We're just using that 12 divided by 3. We're just using that basic fact as our guide here. Okay, so now we multiply, and we know that 4 times 0 is 0, and that 4 times 3 is 12. So that does work because 4 times 30 equals 120, and that's less than what we have here. So now we subtract, and what do we end up with? This would be 0, this would be 0. We have a remainder of 7. So 127 divided by 30 equals 4 with a remainder of 7. Again, we can do that multiplication checking. So we take our divisor and our quotient, 30 times 4, we multiply, that's 120. We then have to add on the remainder, 127, and that's what we started with. Okay, those were the first two examples that they showed you. And then there is the practice. So let's take a look at the practice, please. Okay, you can be looking at those now, seeing if you can figure it out while I'm getting them here on the board. Okay, so let's work through these together. So here we have 72 divided by 30. Again, we break it down to give us a guide, something to work with. 7 divided by 3 we know would be 2 because we know that 2 times 3 equals 6. So if we're going to say 72 divided by 30, we would put the 2 here. 2 times 0 is 0 and 2 times 3 is 6. 72 minus 60 equals 12. 12 is less than 30, so we can have that as a remainder. And our answer is 2 with a remainder of 12.
Yes, sir.
Then we have 87 divided by 20. Okay, you might not know that answer, just 87 divided by 20, but use the guide 8 divided by 2. 8 divided by 2 equals 4, so we're going to use 4 here. 87 divided by 20 equals 4. Well, let's see. 4 times 0 equals 0, and 4 times 2 equals 8. 87 minus 80 equals 7. 7 is less than 20, so that is our remainder. 95 divided by 40. Again, you may not know, you may know what the answer is. You may be able to do that, but if not, you want to use something as your guide, and so you can say 9 divided by 4. 9 divided by 4 would be 2 because 2 times 4 is 8. So let's try 2. 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 4 is 8. 95 minus 80 equals 15. 15 is less than 40, so that is our remainder. 127 divided by 20. Again, you may know, you may be able to figure that out on your own. 20 times what comes close to 127. But if not, then you can break it down and you can use a basic fact. And so here you have 12 divided by 2. 12 divided by 2 would be 6, so let's try 6 here. 6 times 0 equals 0. 6 times 2 equals 12. 127 minus 120. Okay, we get a remainder of 7. That's less than 20, so that's correct. 127 divided by 40. Again, if you know right away, 40 times what comes close to 127, great. If not, you break it down and you look for those basic facts. And so what do I have here? 12 divided by 4. I know that 12 divided by 4 would be 3, so I'm going to try that here. 127 divided by 40 is 3. Let's see. 3 times 0 is 0, and 3 times 4 equals 12. 127 minus 120, I have a remainder of 7. Okay? And then finally we have 217 divided by 30. Same thing. Maybe you know right away what the answer should be. Maybe you need to break it down and use the basic facts. So I have 21 divided by 3. Your basic fact, you know that 3 times 7 equals 21. So I'm going to try 7 here. 7 times 0 equals 0. 7 times 3 equals 21. 217 minus 210 equals 7. That's the remainder. Now again, at any point you might say, well, I'm doing 217 divided by 30. 21 divided by 3 equals 7. I'm not sure. Will 7 work here? Well, again, you can just do your little multiplication problem first, and you can say, well, I'm going to try 7. So let me see, what is 30 times 7? And you might work it out like this and find, okay, 30 times 7 is 210. 210 is less than 217, so I can use that. So you might need to work out the little multiplication problems here, whereas when I was doing it with you, I just said, okay, well, we think this is 4. Let's try. 4 times 0 equals 0. 4 times 2 equals 8. But of course, what I was doing was this, 20 times 4. I just wasn't writing each one. Over here, 127 divided by 20, I thought it might be 6. Well, you could work out that multiplication problem. 20 times 6 equals 120. So again, different ways that you can go about doing it. Again, some people can just look at the problem and have an idea of what the answer, what the quotient might be. Others might need to look for that basic fact and use that. Remember, we all work through it a little bit differently, but there are different ways that you can go about doing it. Also, when you get your answer and you have the remainder, you can always go back and do the checking if you need to. So over here, you had 95 divided by 40, you got 2 with the remainder of 15. You might want to work that through to check it. So you might say 40 times 2, okay? And 40 times 2 equals 80, but then you have to remember to add on your remainder. And if you add on that remainder, you get an answer of 95, which is your dividend. It's what you started with, okay? So again, the process of the division is not new to you. We've been working on long division for a while. We did do dividing by 10. Now you have dividing by multiples of 10. Again, the important part also being where you're writing that quotient. It's so important that that quotient gets written in the right place. Even though you're in this problem, you're thinking 12 divided by 2, you don't write the 6 above the 12. Why? Because that's only something you're using as a guide. What you're actually saying is 127 divided by 20. And because you're saying 127 divided by 20, you have to write your quotient above the 7. Okay? Because this 12 divided by 2 is only being used as a guide to help you come up with 7 as your quotient. Okay, because you're really saying 127 divided by 20. So you write that quotient above the 7. Okay? Again, this really just reiterates the importance of putting the quotient in the correct column, as I was teaching you all along when we were working with long division. All right, so for today, lesson 120, and you will be completing numbers 1 to 30. Lesson 120, numbers 1 to 30. If you have any questions or you need my help in any way, please make sure you give me a call. Otherwise, I'll see you later. Bye.